The strike on the Dnepropetrovsk Yuzhmash, which became a casualty of the combat test of the new medium-range hypersonic ballistic missile Oreshnik, has likely drawn the attention of nearly everyone on this planet. In late 2024, without any doubt, this is the most discussed topic in the world. What happened on November 21st? Where did it come from? What is it? And how dangerous is Oreshnik in reality? Is it possible to intercept this type of missile? We will discuss all of this in this episode. Enjoy watching! For those who are unaware, one of Ukraine's main defense enterprises, Dnepropetrovsk, now called Dnipro and Yuzhmash, was attacked. This event sparked a whole wave of discussions and speculations. What could have caused this strike of unprecedented power and epic scale? On the video, it seemed as though the heavens themselves had opened and unleashed divine wrath upon the earth. Many sources immediately asserted that this was nothing other than an ICBM, which stands for Intercontinental Ballistic Missile. But this version didn't hold up to a couple of simple questions. Why spend money on such a long-range and expensive item when Russia and Ukraine are neighbors? And second, if this really were an intercontinental ballistic missile, surely a similar thing would have flown towards it from the other hemisphere. As they say, the whole world in ashes. Shall we strike? We definitely will. More than once. The whole world in ashes. But later on. Outlets like NBC, CBS, ABC, and BBC were closer to the truth. They reported, citing their sources among Western officials, that a medium-range ballistic missile had been launched. The key difference, first of all, is in the range of use. But importantly, the launch of a medium-range ballistic missile, unlike an intercontinental ballistic missile, would not require notifying esteemed partners and would not provoke a clear response to a potential nuclear missile heading their way. However, the catch is that officially the Russian Federation's armed forces did not have medium-range ballistic missiles in service, and the last ones that existed in the USSR, like the RST-10 Pioneer, were eliminated immediately after the signing of the Intermediate-Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, concluded by Reagan and Gorbachev on December 8, 1987. It specifically banned the creation and arming of medium and short-range missiles. Based on this, many concluded that it was a new development. There were speculations that the modern successor to the defunct Pioneer might be the RS-26 Rubezh, developed in contemporary Russia. Research on the latter was ongoing in the early 2000s, and the first test launch occurred in September of the now distant 2011. After that, the trail of this missile disappeared for many years because its specifications at least conflicted with that very INF treaty. Although it appeared in limited documentation, it was considered an intercontinental ballistic missile at the time, but more on that later. In 2019, the treaty expired, and it seems that both Russia and the United States actively resumed development in the previously prohibited area. And as one can guess, all recent events are directly related to this. But what exactly happened on November 21st remains a question, a demonstration of capabilities, or a threat in response to the Western countries' permission to strike with their long-range missiles. I think it's both, but since we're not a political channel, let's delve into the technical aspects of the newly minted weapon in the 21st century. These, regardless of what's being said, are truly powerful weapons. Although the impact on Yuzhmash was significant, it wasn't global. It's far from being ruins at the very least, because the launch was a test and included simple dummies as warheads, and definitely not nuclear charges or even explosive warheads. Satellite images before and after tell the truth, but the damage is still significant. However, it is localized to the areas where the missiles hit. It's currently impossible to obtain more detailed information. These sites have been cordoned off and remaining fragments were immediately collected. Some joke that they're from washing machines, but you can judge for yourself how similar they are to the insides of your household appliances. The existence of such systems, especially in their nuclear form, significantly lowers the possible threshold for launching a nuclear strike and almost eliminates the chance for a timely retaliatory response. The flight time of their missiles to targets is significantly shorter than that of intercontinental ballistic missiles and takes only a few minutes. That is precisely why these missiles were mutually banned at one point. As I already mentioned, the closest known relative of the Oreshnik is the RS-26 missile, which is estimated to have had a launch weight of about 40 to 50 tons. And it was capable of delivering 4 separate warheads over distances from 2 to 6,000 kilometers. Initially, it was developed specifically as a light intercontinental ballistic missile, capable of striking at distances of 5,500 kilometers and beyond. But this was the official interpretation, in order not to violate the treaty, which by then was rapidly becoming a fiction. The development was completed back in the 2010s, but it never went into production, giving way to the Vanguard complex. Frankly speaking, even the USSR in its best years would have struggled to develop many fundamentally different rockets at once in such a situation. So let's remember the hope of the entire Russian space program in the Angara launch vehicle system. What the heck is it doing here? I hope it doesn't surprise anyone that Soviet space exploration, like the American, was just a byproduct of its military programs. Therefore, all ideas and concepts here are closely interconnected. The same happened with the concept of the Angara launch vehicle family, which consists of standardized modules that can be assembled into any launch vehicle needed to meet specific requirements. I would like to remind you that the complex was developed back in the turbulent 1990s, when funding in the industry became scarce and it was necessary to learn to economize. Furthermore, space became very much a part of the global market, where not only political will prevails, but now also market mechanisms. So, the value of launch vehicles like Angara lies in their modular structure, which allows you to swap blocks as needed. If you want, you can add booster stages and the rocket flies longer. If not, you load the rockets with payload blocks. So, I think you understand where I'm going with this. Additionally, any treaty is just a piece of paper that not only has an expiration date, but one side can easily withdraw from it by saying, "That's it, I'm safe now." The United States, considering their vastly higher capabilities and much larger budgets after the collapse of the USSR, could easily have done so, placing the direct successor of the superpower in a very dangerous position. Therefore, cunning was necessary. In the 2000 years, the nuclear arsenal introduced the Yars missile family, led by the main intercontinental ballistic missile RS-24 to this day. These missiles were a development of the previous creations of the Moscow Institute of Thermal Technology, the Topol and Topol-M. The first flight of the Yars was in 2007, and it was commissioned in 2009. Ironically, the same Topol-M was developed by the very Yuzhnoye Design Bureau in what was formerly Dnepropetrovsk. Khrushchev once said about Yuzhmash that the Soviets make rockets like sausages. Indeed, a rate of 100 rockets per year, or one every 3 days, has neither been achieved nor even possibly reached by anyone to this day. In short, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs only took over the development after the country's collapse. Electronics and the warhead deployment module were also being developed in Ukraine for the new missiles being prepared. Because of this, much of the Yars had to be created practically from scratch, and the missile itself, conceptually developed back in the late 1980s, was delayed by about 20 years. Initially, when work began, the project was called Universal by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and encompassed an entire family of missiles. For example, the Yarzus is only 17.5 meters long, which is more than 4 meters shorter than the original, and accordingly, much lighter. Officially, it is known that there are 5 completed models. At different times, projects within the Yars family appeared under code names like Cedar, Aspen, and apparently Hazel fits well into this logical sequence. And apparently, it combined the features of the Yars missile family with developments from the Angara and RS-26 Rubesh systems, a complex that was created, tested, and then forgotten for more than a decade many years ago. Largely because it raised concerns in the United States, although officially the Americans latched onto Iskander, claiming its missiles fly farther than 500 kilometers. Russia accused the United States of deploying missile defense systems in Eastern European countries, which, according to Russian experts, are dual-purpose systems that can not only intercept ballistic missiles, but also launch them. Moreover, in this situation, China stood out quite favorably, not burdened by any treaties, and calmly continued developing short and medium-range missiles. Well, does it surprise anyone that on August 2nd, 2019, nobody extended the Intermediate-Range Nuclear Forces Treaty? However, as I mentioned, the states were not so worried about Iskander or even Yars, but specifically about RS-26 Rubesh. But why? It's simple. Because even though the Rubesh missile could reach almost 7,500 kilometers, as demonstrated, thereby classifying it as a permitted intercontinental ballistic missile, the main task was clearly striking targets at much shorter distances. At least 2 facts indirectly indicated this. Rubesh was also tested from Kapustin Yar to the Sari-Shagan range in Kazakhstan, which is slightly more than 2,000 kilometers apart. In the same way, traditionally, all Soviet intermediate-range missiles were tested. The Belarusians made a 6-axle chassis, MZKT-79-291, for it, like for the RST-10 Pioneer. It's not 8-axle like Yars, but still designed for a 50-ton load, and consequently a much shorter possible length of the missile itself. Meanwhile, the RS-26 Rubesh can also be confidently classified alongside Yars. It has the same engines, some modified stages, and essentially the same launch and control system. In essence, it is a shorter and lighter Yars. However, the new Oreshnik system is advantageously distinguished by several features even from the RS-26. The thing is, traditional ballistic missiles that came before this would fly at high altitudes, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 or 5,000 kilometers. The flight profile of the Oreshnik is more like that of the Iskander. It travels at a very low altitude without going into space, practically in the stratosphere, about 100 kilometers above the Earth. This nullifies the possibility of interception at the most vulnerable initial and mid-flight stages by both existing and future missile defense systems. Considering the use of hypersonic guided blocks, the range of the Oreshnik can be much shorter than even the minimum allowed for missiles of the class, which is, let me remind you, 1,000 kilometers. For example, the distance from Kapustin Yar to the impact point in Dnipro was less than 800 kilometers. So, Oreshnik is not just a medium-range missile. It's a versatile missile capable of covering any distances exceeding that of the Iskander, meaning from 500 kilometers. The second feature of the Oreshnik is the separate warhead units, capable of maneuvering at supersonic speeds, meaning they are so-called hypersonic blocks. Overall, similar to the Avangard system, the Kinzhal with Zircon cannot do this. And by the way, the inability to maneuver at hypersonic speed is a key drawback of American missile defense systems. By the way, the RSD-10 Pioneer also had a warhead with 3 nuclear warheads, each of which could be targeted at different objects. Yes, they could not maneuver, but nevertheless, this made it a formidable weapon capable of overcoming the missile defense systems of its time. However, there was no hypersonic capability. And so, the third feature is the incredible speed of the Oreshnik. According to the president, 10 Mach. In practice, it reaches 11 to 12, and on some parts of the flight, it can be even more. But even at 10 Mach, that's almost 3.5 kilometers per second, which is damn very fast. At that speed, hitting the ground would be quite a spectacle, and even simple metal projectiles can unleash devastating power. Let's not go too far. The kinetic energy of a 4 or 5 ton warhead from the Avangard, even just as a dummy, is comparable to the power of an 18-ton bomb. Yes, the Oreshnik has a smaller charge, around 1.5 tons, which is still 3 times more than the Iskander. However, the Avangard has a monoblock warhead, while the Oreshnik can have between 2 to 6 blocks. Each of these is divided into 6 parts, including 1 warhead and 5 decoys. Each unit, as one can note, is equipped with an individual guidance system and engines. Moreover, all charges in the block could be decoys. They can be combined in any way. That's why Ukrainian sources claim there were 2 actual strikes on Yuzhmash. The rest of the fireworks we saw was the result of decoys. Altogether, there were 6 hits, each with 6 submunitions. These blocks are clearly smaller than those of the Avangard, because under the rocket's fairing, with a diameter of 2.5 meters, only 1 block fits, while in the Yars family of rockets, with a diameter of 1 5800 meters, to which the Oreshnik belongs, at least 2 blocks fit. The missile is smaller, which means even mathematically, it's harder to intercept. Additionally, the warheads of the Oreshnik are likely easier and cheaper to produce. Firstly, the physics at 10 Mach is obviously simpler than for the Avangard blocks flying at 27 Mach, with only 6 of those deployed each year. Secondly, the Oreshnik is highly unified with the RS-24 Yars, which itself was produced at a rate of over 20 missiles per year. If Oreshnik is its simplified version, then logically, there should be more of them. Plus, these are not peaceful times, so according to the most modest estimates of experts, there will be dozens each year. Therefore, those who say there are no more than 10 Oreshnik rockets are either being misleading or don't understand the issue. Today, that might be the case, but over time, this number will grow exponentially. Since Oreshnik is capable of flying on a very flat trajectory, similar to Iskander M, it can cover a distance of thousands of kilometers in just a few minutes. In the countries of Western Europe, the flight time has already been calculated in detail. In short, the missile covers 5,500 kilometers in about 15 minutes. But the concerns don't end there. With such speed and ability to maneuver at hypersonic levels, the new Russian warhead is extremely difficult to track and intercept, if not impossible. What could actually be done about it? Of course, uninformed people online quickly started saying that the Patriot system was designed for intercepting short and medium-range ballistic missiles. However, in real combat conditions, its effectiveness turned out to be so-so. I've already recorded a video on this topic. I'll leave a link in the description and suggestion just in case. Theoretically, it is possible to shoot down the Oreshnik. However, it might only be feasible at the very early stage of its flight, when the missile is gaining altitude, which is still significantly higher than its cruising level of 100 kilometers. The Nutcracker only descends to those later after launch, but even for this, an anti-missile system must be deployed absolutely close, at least on the same territory as Ukraine. And such an interception would, logically, occur over the territory of the Russian Federation. And no one will go for that, at least not for now. However, all of this is just my guesses and assumptions. However, in the higher command of the armed forces of Ukraine, they did not harbor any illusions and immediately started talking not about the Patriot, but at the very least about the need for supplies of the THAAD missile defense system. How else can it be explained that Yuzhmash was definitely covered by Patriots, since the development and production of components for American missiles had long been underway there, making it a strategic facility. However, informed Telegram channels reported that Oreshnik wasn't even detected by the Patriot radar systems until the very end. As of now, there are no radars in the world capable of detecting a hypersonic target. So, launching an anti-missile at a target you can't see is like trying to shoot down a bullet with a slingshot. Theoretically possible, but practically THAAD is an American exoatmospheric missile interception system for medium and long-range missiles, but it can also be used as an air defense system against aircraft. It was commissioned in the United States in 2008. In the US, there are only 7 such batteries in total, with one on the island of Guam, another in South Korea, and a third sent to Israel. This leaves only 4 Type batteries for the protection of the US itself. Moreover, each one costs $3 billion, which is 3 times more expensive than the Patriot, and a single shot costs $20 million. It's unlikely that any of them will go to Ukraine. However, there's not much point in that. Indeed, the THAAD missile is 3 times heavier than the Patriot missile and has impressive range. However, its tests were conducted on targets mimicking the old Soviet R-17. Yes, that also reached speeds of up to 3 kilometers per second, but it did not carry electronic countermeasures and was not capable of maneuvering. So, there is no real defense against the Oreshnik, and it is unlikely to appear anytime soon. The ability to reach speeds of 10 to 15 Mach, a low altitude of 100 kilometers, and the capability to maneuver with these parameters undermine the entire concept of the US missile defense systems, into which tens of billions of dollars have been invested. And even more will be invested, since there is plainly no replacement for it today. And the power, equivalent to 3 Iskanders, reaches any point on the continent. In theory, by experimenting with booster stages and replacing some of them with a warhead, the missile's range can be extended to up to 2,000 kilometers, but with a warhead of 4 or 5 tons. This is truly an unparalleled weapon that will undoubtedly keep the entire continent on edge. And Ukraine, unfortunately, has the fate of being a testing ground, as regrettable as that may be. In my opinion, we have returned to the early 1980s with the famous standoff between Pershings and pioneers when the fear of uncontrolled nuclear escalation led to the signing of that very intermediate-range nuclear forces treaty. One hopes that common sense will also prevail in the modern world, and over time we'll see a conditional intermediate-range nuclear forces treaty too. I hope that after watching this video, you have fewer questions about Oreshnik, and you'll thank me with a like or even better by subscribing to the channel. I'll say it again, it would be better if we only discussed such weapons in videos and never witnessed the use of anything like that. So I wish peaceful skies for everyone, and see you soon in new videos.